Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Tequila, Georgia, my good friend, Pelley University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, and his green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Yes, sir. It's good. You know, I love how you put Tequila, Georgia on the map like that. Yeah, I'm ready, man. This is the week that we've been waiting for. Georgia, Tennessee. It's good stuff. I'm jacked about it, as Dan Quinn would say.
I wouldn't say I'm jacked about it. Like it's one of those. I mean, obviously we're on Nico watch every day here locally, but I don't know. I think it's one of those. We'll get into like our feelings, and I'm curious where we're both at here in the middle of the week before kickoff, because I just I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't feel strongly. Like the last couple of years, I mean, last year I think I picked Georgia to win here in Tennessee, and that game wasn't close. 2 years ago, obviously, was closer to the matchup we're getting now, to top 10 teams in the country, but it doesn't have the same juice that it did 2 years ago for a lot of reasons that we'll get into. It's not like it's not going to be the game of the day. It's just not. It doesn't feel the same, and I think both fan bases are limping into this game a little bit. And just not confident. I don't think either fan base is going to go into Saturday and this weekend confident about how things are going to go. Because if you come out saying that, like, oh, here's what's going to happen, Georgia's going to steamroll Tennessee, I'm just like, I can't take you seriously, because like there's nothing over what Georgia's done over the last month and a half that would ever lead you to believe to that. Like, and Tennessee fans who are like, oh, we're going in there and they're real and we're doing it. And it's like, all right, man, like, sure. If you say so, I believe you, but I just don't think there's any real evidence to support like you having a firm handle on what Tennessee team's going to show up who hasn't been on the road in over a month. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. It's been a long time, and since Tennessee's been on the road, it's been a long time since Georgia's been at home. So I don't know. I'm comfortable not knowing, and this is the most up in the air Georgia Tennessee has been in the Heupel Kirby battle. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think it's the most up in the air.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously we'll get into the game, but the fact that it's sitting at a 10.5 point spread is crazy to me. Like, I don't know. It's a weird time. Like last time what you're talking about in 2022, like that was literally number one versus number one, like number one in the AP poll versus number one in the playoff rankings. So yeah, this one's a little bit different, but it's still like Georgia needs this game a lot. So like it's still got the intense like pressure around it. And I feel like, as a fan, it's like on Sunday, like this is just the ebbs and flows of the football season. It's like on Sunday, you're down, your team lost. You're just, you don't want to hear anything. And then it's like, as the week goes on, you start digging in, you're like, you know what? I think we could beat this team. I think we could bounce back. And then you convince yourself all over again that your team can get it done. So, who knows what's going to happen, but this is why we love college football, sir.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Green, before we dive into our Week 12 pick'em, sir, second CFP rankings came out this week, and you have a Dennis Reynolds, the implication, in our show notes here. So what was the implication left by the committee here?
The implication, sir, the college football rankings are very interesting this week. So, I was on the soapbox last week at how undefeated BYU and undefeated Indiana needed to be right up there in the top four. And they have them at 5 and 6. And so Indiana's 10-0, BYU's 9-0. For those that don't know the rankings, you got Oregon at 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4 in front of those teams. The idea that Penn State and Indiana's resume is better than Tennessee at 7, but worse than Texas and Penn State at 3 and 4 just makes absolutely no sense to me. So, like, you have Indiana sitting there, and obviously they have the game with Ohio State coming up, so it'll work itself out. But BYU is still sitting there like undefeated, not getting that respect. So my thing is, if you have those teams ahead of Tennessee right now. If Tennessee loses a game, or loses to Georgia, like I'm not sure if Tennessee is ahead of Indiana or BYU if they lose a game. Like if BYU's undefeated, loses the Big 12 championship, like are they going to get punished when all the talk has been all year that the SEC champion or the SEC championship loser wouldn't get punished? But does BYU undefeated losing to Colorado or something, do they get punished? Like I don't know. And so Indiana sitting at 0 losses and Tennessee at 1 loss, if they both lose this week, or Indiana's next week, Ohio State, if they both lose their next game, Indiana's still ahead of Tennessee, right? And then what can Tennessee do to jump them in the final weeks? A win over Vanderbilt, or they have it's a cupcake, or do they have
it's
an
UTEP
SEC
and then
game?
Vanderbilt? Yeah,
it's a non-conference game, right?
Yeah, it's UTEP.
Yeah, so it's very interesting kind of where they've put these teams right now, because Tennessee has a win over by their definition, the number 10 team in the country, and Texas doesn't have a win over one ranked team. Penn State doesn't have a win over one ranked team. So I've been on this soapbox for a few weeks now, but like I just don't understand the idea that Texas and Penn State are better than these undefeated teams. Ohio State has a win over Penn State, so I mean that's the best win that any of the one-loss teams have by far. So they can kind of justify being up there. But I just can't. I don't understand Penn State and Texas being where they are, and Tennessee being behind those two undefeateds.
I 100% agree. I mean, I think Tennessee should be 3 right now. I'm not saying I think Tennessee's the third best team in the country right now, but with their 1 loss, I think they've shown more than what Texas has shown over the course of the whole year, because Texas has one big game thus far. They got blasted by Georgia, and that was a home game. It wasn't like they went to Athens and struggled. And
Georgia looks worse and worse every week. Like that's the best that Georgia's looked all season.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like it just seems like they're getting. Look, I'm a big believer in Texas. It's like what I feel about what Texas can do is not what I think where they should be in the playoff rankings in week 2. Those are 2 different conversations. If you're asking me, do I think Texas can win the national title? Do I think they're best equipped to potentially win the national title? My answer would be yes. Does that mean that's where I think they should be right now? No, because like the schedule and what we've seen thus far have to matter. Yeah, I just don't understand the logic. If you're going to put Indiana and BYU ahead of Tennessee, then they have to be ahead of Penn State, Texas too. To this point, to your point there, and I also wonder, like, if they do lose to Ohio State, how far do they fall? Because it's only 1 loss, but you set the precedent, like you said, where Tennessee's got 2 losses. What does that mean? Like Alabama, they're not going to fall past Alabama, Ole Miss.
Penn State's up there at number 4 with the quality loss to Ohio State.
Well, how does Georgia get back in? If they go to 8-2, does that push Tennessee all the way back to like 13 here? I mean, the chaos thing that I'm looking at too, Matt Green, because they clearly feel so highly about Texas. If Texas loses to A&M, misses the SEC title game, A&M goes to the SEC title game in this scenario, and they force their way back into it, you could be looking at a 6-team absolute mess in the SEC of 2 lost teams. But also, if you lose to A&M and you lose to Georgia, that's not a better resume than Tennessee. If you're trying to parse through stuff where you're like, oh, who belongs more in a 10-2 a 10-2 spot there? Like if Texas drops the A&M game and still misses the SEC title game to get vindicated a little bit, loses their 2 biggest games in their calendar.
They're only 2 games versus ranked teams.
Yeah, how do you still put them in just because you think that they can win the national title? That's not how it should work. Then why are we playing these games if you know that the talent's there? Like, that's what I'm going to be most curious. If Texas loses to A&M, what that does, because they should be taken out of
they're by
the CFP.
Far the worst resume of those 2 loss SEC teams if they do lose.
But they're so high up, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, and I think that's why I kind of question doing this every week, because they're just opening themselves up for unneeded criticism. If they just took in the whole season and then just decided, like it wouldn't be as much transparency for the fans, but it's like, I don't know, we're in week 12. It's like, well, I already know that you guys are overvaluing Texas. Are you going to keep doing this every week? Like we're trying to change your mind before you make your final decision. Like, I don't know, but I think it's interesting that you still have Notre Dame and Miami ahead of this group of 2-loss SEC teams, because like you look at what's interesting is Georgia obviously has an opportunity to boost their resume with a win over Tennessee, but you can't have Georgia jump Alabama or Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
So are you just gonna Alabama and Ole Miss don't really have anything to boost their resume to really justify jumping Notre Dame or Miami? Like if you're saying right now through what they've done through 12 weeks, 11 weeks, wherever we're at, that Notre Dame and Miami are better than Alabama and Ole Miss, then wins over Florida and Mississippi State, that's not really going to change your mind about how good Ole Miss is. Like wins over Auburn and Oklahoma and Mercer aren't really going to change your mind on how good Alabama is. So those are kind of roadblocks to where Georgia sits in the rankings. So you just kind of have to keep Miami and Notre Dame ahead of them if they keep winning. Like Notre Dame's got Army, right? Like that's a ranked win that they're going to count on. Like that's going to boost their resume, if anything, right? So I don't know. Especially
well, they still got USC
by like
too,
40
and
points.
USC's led in the fourth quarter of like how many straight games where they're right there. I mean, USC's going to give them a fight.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They definitely could. But I mean, if they beat USC, that's not even a quality win. I mean, what would that be like? Their 7th loss at that point or something. So I don't know. So that I think that's just interesting. Like if Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia are kind of on a log jam just behind those teams, or are they just gonna say, we've watched a few games. We actually now think all these teams are better than Notre Dame and Miami. Like they might just change their mind. But if there is that log jam, then Tennessee has to sit there behind Georgia most likely too. So I think Tennessee could really end up getting kind of screwed in this situation, because if they lose to Georgia, they take care of business. That's the cleanest thing we have. We get Texas and Tennessee, 2 one-loss teams, no chaos. But if Tennessee's 10-2, the fact that they've already showed you they value Texas and Penn State's resume more than Tennessee to this point, I think that's got to worry you, because Tennessee's not going to do anything to improve their resume if they lose to Georgia.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And then the worst case for the committee, Gaston plays for Nico and Tennessee loses close with Gaston and a backup quarterback.
Geez.
Like, are you really going to penalize? Like, Tennessee loses by like 3 points, so they cover with a backup quarterback in Athens, and you're like, how much are you going to drop us? Because we're not losing another game the rest of the season. Like, are you really going to, like, we didn't have our quarterback, and we, like, because Tennessee could come out in that point on Sunday and be like, Nico plays, that's the difference in 6 points, and you win the game or whatever. Like, that's the worst case for the committee, because if that game's close on Saturday and Nico doesn't play, like, that is one where not only will Tennessee fans have a reason to be, they're already going to be energized and they're already pretty fired up about how this is going to go in terms of whether or not they get in the playoff. But man, that's a situation the committee does not want to find themselves in, of trying to figure out how to rank Tennessee if they lose close without Nico. Because then if you keep them out and it's a Jordan Travis situation all over again, almost, where you're like, we're not like, I don't know, but I still think some of this stuff is going to play out. The thing that will annoy me is if Texas gets in and after losing to A&M, if they lose to A&M in the last week of the season. If they still get in,
depending on who gets in, like right. If they get in over somebody, then
over Tennessee at 10-2 will drive me up the wall, because there's no actual good reason to do that other than you just think that they are better, and then why are we playing the games if you just think they are better?
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's going to be interesting how it unfolds, and I don't know what the even the SEC championship scenario is if Texas loses, because I think
A&M's in. I think that's going to be a
their own destiny, right? In the SEC,
that's what I'm saying. I think it's right now. If Tennessee beats Georgia, they're in. As long as they win the rest, they win
against
and beat Vanderbilt. They play the winner of Texas A&M. But if Georgia beats Tennessee, Bama, I believe, is in, and Bama will play the winner of Texas A&M, is I think how it works right now.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we'll see what happens.
Man, I can't wait for A&M Texas, but we got a ways to go. We got to get to Tennessee Georgia. Speaking of Tennessee Georgia, Matt Green, our Week 12 pick'em is here. Sir, how do things stand right now? And then let's dive into Tennessee Georgia.
All right, sir. Going into this is Week 12. I got a 1-game lead on you overall, 88-45 on the season. You are 87-46. And then I got a 6-game lead on you against the spread, 66-66-1 on the season. Maybe I can get above 500 this week. And you are 60-72-1 on the season. So yeah, you beat me last week, so we need to bounce back this week. You were 10-2 overall. Your second best week of the season. Back in what was that? Week 3, you had that 11-1 performance. That was big time stuff. But yeah, so we'll see what's happening. We got 3 weeks left, so we'll see what happens.
I love it.
Wait, that can't be right. We gotta have 4 weeks left, right? There's 3.
Well, there's 3 weeks of
regular
games
season
left. There's 3 weeks
we got
of
a
games.
conference championship. I gotta add a little row here. I'm telling you, I don't know where this week came from. This second bye week, I don't know. Someone magically threw this extra week in this year, and I'm not sure what happened. But I'll trust it.
The Volunteers go into Athens as 10.5-point road dogs. This is the game of the weekend under the lights. I think I saw that players and fans are pushing for a blackout for this game for Georgia, Tennessee on Saturday night. Matt Green, biggest game of the pod every year here. What say you going into this one on Saturday?
I say if the blackout is what the fans need to get even 1% louder in that stadium, might as well do it, right? This is somehow the third home game against Power 4 competition that Georgia has played all season. And one of them was Mississippi State, which I think they did bring it against Mississippi State as much as you can against Mississippi State. But the other one was Auburn, where the fans didn't even bring it. So Kirby called them out for a lackluster performance as fans. So you get finally a big-time game at night. Like, obviously, Georgia's coming off one of the worst losses of the Kirby Smart era, honestly, like we talked about last week. But now you get Tennessee coming to your house. And I think what's mind-blowing to me is this is Tennessee's first road game since October 5th. And that was a loss to Arkansas. So it's crazy to me that Georgia's had so few home games and Tennessee has had so few road games. Like,
well, Tennessee played a bunch of road games early. Like, Tennessee did not play a key home game until mid-October against Florida.
It was just Oklahoma and Arkansas, right? And then
but you also played NC State in a neutral site, and there was a bye before Arkansas. So Tennessee did not play a home game for a month straight.
Gotcha. But it's kind of just crazy the way the schedule has worked out that way. So I just, obviously Georgia fans are not feeling great right now in terms of what this team was supposed to be and versus what they are. But it's never easy to go into a hostile environment. And if Georgia is doing the blackout, then who knows? Maybe it brings a little bit of extra energy.
Maybe. I mean, you're going to need it because energy, I'm very curious what the vibe is, as we talked about at the top of this program. Matt Green, I've been thinking about this game obviously all week, and we won't know for certain until the end of the week on where things stand with Nico. But I think when you look at the injury report, we're taping this on a Wednesday night as we do every week, sir, and what stood out to me, and this is something I've been telling folks all week, is just I think Tennessee fans have really tied themselves in knots about, like, oh, the run issues, the run fits the last 2 weeks against Kentucky and Mississippi State. Not only is Georgia not running the ball well in SEC play, they're also extremely banged up. Like, Nate Frazier might start in this one. You have Trevor Etienne, who's banged up. Robinsons are out. Cash Jones is in a walking boot. Yeah, like, they're banged up. Georgia's not going to run on Tennessee. Like, if Georgia is going to beat Tennessee on Saturday night, it's because Carson Beck got back to Carson Beck form. And I think that's the thing. If you're a Tennessee fan, you feel good is that they're going to have to play this game in a way that I don't think is comfortable still to Georgia in this offense. Is this that, like, I don't think Kirby loves the fact that to beat Tennessee on Saturday night, Carson Beck is going to have to play a clean game where he throws guys open, where he unleashes Lockie Lusson, Lucky
Lawson,
yeah, whatever. I always get it wrong. I stumble through it. But Arian Smith has to have a big game, like I think in this one. I think you need to have a lot of explosive plays. Carson Beck has to elevate what he has, because right now there's just no fixing this late in the season. Like that, you have what you have. Colby Young is not bad. Like you look through it, I was looking like Colby Young had a good game against Auburn. And I think he
had a touchdown versus Clemson.
Yeah, and that was, and you go back through, and this is something I wanted to bring up, and like people are talking about Georgia, and it's like they're home for the first time in a month, and I'm like, okay, since Tennessee Tech, Georgia struggles on the road at Kentucky. They get blitzed early and come back and almost beat Alabama, but still lose. Then Auburn, not a great turnaround, but Auburn was able to run the ball. They actually outgained Georgia on the ground in that football game.
Georgia beat Auburn by like 3 touchdowns. Right?
But if you look at it, it wasn't like a beatdown. It was just kind of like a soft, like we're gonna win and we're just putting you to sleep nicely. It's as the solid verbal guys say, it was a crock-potting where they took their time, and it never felt in doubt, but it also wasn't just like this statement blowout. Yeah. Then you get Mississippi State. I feel
like you feel that way because Georgia's making any big plays.
Yeah.
It's like there's no statements because there's just nothing's ever easy. Like I think I don't have the stats in front of me, Georgia may have had more first downs than Ole Miss in that game because Ole Miss was picking up like 25, 30-yard chunks at a time, whereas Georgia had to take 3 plays to get 10 yards every time. So they were getting more first downs, but it's because they had to get 10 yards at a time. Like it's just difficult.
Well, and then look at Mississippi State. So that one was a tough one too, where that 41-31, Tennessee had a lot easier time handling Mississippi State than Georgia did. You go to Texas, that's your most impressive one of the year. Florida is in that game in the first half with DJ Lagway, and who knows what that looks like at the end. Not saying that Florida wins, but that was a game.
Georgia took the lead with like 3 minutes left. It was tied with like 5 minutes left in the game. It was a fourth quarter game.
Yeah. And then obviously you have the worst game of the year at Ole Miss. So you just go through it and you're like, outside of Clemson and even Texas, I guess, but like, it's not like there's a bunch of things you can point to this entire Georgia season. And especially over the last month and a half where you're like, they're just going to flip the script. They're going to turn it on because we haven't seen it. Like we haven't seen that kind of Georgia team since Clemson. And I just caution folks who see the line, the 10.5, like that's a lock. Tennessee covering that to me. If they, when I think about this game, is Tennessee has given up 20 or they have given up 18, I think, or less points all season long. They haven't given up 20 plus points in a game since Vanderbilt last year. I don't see this Georgia offense being the one that just with everything they're dealing with in the backfield, everything they're dealing with the tackle spots, everything they're dealing with at receiver, that they are the team that just breaks the doors off this Tennessee defense. The Tennessee defense is for real, and I think Georgia's offensive problems are for real. The difference, though, is I think Georgia's defense is starting to get more confident and playing better, and I think Georgia's defense is going to get up for this game. Georgia's getting healthier, especially on the defensive line with Jordan Hall and company coming back. Like I think Tennessee's going to struggle to run the football. Deshaun Bishop's out. We'll see what that rotation looks like behind Dylan Sampson. But I think for Tennessee to win this game on the flip side, Nico and or Gaston Moore is going to have to make big shot plays. Like Dante Thornton is third in the SEC in big 30-plus yard plays, receptions, only trailing Ryan Williams and Trey Harris. Two guys who are on the teams that beat Georgia this year. So that's something of note. So Dante Thornton is questionable. He has to play, I think, for Tennessee to have a chance. Because I think Dante Thornton is going to have a big touchdown play in this game for Tennessee to win. That's how we've seen it all year long. When Dante Thornton has a big play, like he did last week against Mississippi State, he had a couple against Oklahoma. Like to win these kind of big games, Dante Thornton's your biggest big play threat. Tennessee's going to have to connect on some of those bombs to Dante Thornton. The other thing, too,
before you move on, like Nate Frazier, like Georgia's run game, like is obviously it's 14th in the SEC, I think right now, yards per game. If ETN can't play, like that is questionable, but there is the aspect that Frazier is like a potential star. Like he has that kind of star, like kind of potential as a true freshman. So if he doesn't fumble, which is, I was gonna say
he could also fumble the game away for Georgia.
Absolutely, but he could also break an 80-yard touchdown run because I think he has that kind of
80-yard touchdown run on Tennessee.
I'm just saying, like, things happen. He could break a long run. Georgia hasn't been breaking a lot of runs this year, but that's the other thing. Like Tennessee is against SEC competition has the 6th ranked run defense. Georgia has the 5th ranked run defense in the conference. Like, there's a lot to be made. There's like a lot made about some of that early production, but like Georgia's also played the number 1 toughest schedule in all of college football this year. And Georgia has more 30-point games than Tennessee offensively. Georgia has 5. Tennessee just
let me push back on the rushing part of it, though. Ole Miss is the only team that's allowing less yards a game on the ground in conference play than Tennessee. Tennessee's averaging 100. Ole Miss is 79. Teams are
in conference play, Tennessee is allowing 119 or 122 a game, and
I'm looking
Georgia's allowing 119.
I mean, I'm
looking at the SEC.
I'm looking at CFP stats
SEC
right now.
In conference play versus SEC teams.
Oh, in conference play. Okay, I was looking at in conference. Sorry. Yeah, in conference play, there's 6 at 122, and Georgia's at 119.
Yeah, so it's like Georgia, it's a lot about what the expectations of Georgia are. Georgia expects to be first, and when they're 4th, it's like, what are we doing? Why are we so terrible? And don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of that. Like, it feels like it doesn't feel like this is a Georgia team this year. But it doesn't mean they're not better than a lot of other teams out there. Like, a lot is made about Georgia's offense, like I was saying, and they've scored 5 30-point games in conference, and Tennessee has 1, which was Mississippi State last week, and that's actually the fewest points Mississippi State's allowed all season against SEC. Like, they're giving up 41 a game and only give up 33 to Tennessee. So obviously Nico missed the second half in that game, but right now, in conference play, Georgia has the number 7 scoring offense, and that's not good. Like 27.6 points a game. Tennessee's at 10th at 24.5. So, and also like the aspect of I said earlier, like they haven't gone on the road since the Arkansas game, and Ole Miss and LSU didn't have any problems going to Arkansas. Like those were both just routes from the jump. So Tennessee still does have some, like, it just part of the expectation of Tennessee wasn't as high as Georgia, but there's still some faults in this Tennessee team for sure.
Yeah. The other part of it, and I mean, that just goes to what we're saying, which is Carson Beck or Nico have to have a big game for their team to win. Like, one of these quarterbacks is going to have to put the team on their back, and like, we're going to look at the end of the game. It's like, if Carson Beck has 2 TDs, no picks, 9.8 yards per attempt, Georgia's probably winning this game. If Nico has 10.1 yards per attempt and 2 TDs and no picks, I think Tennessee probably wins that game. A lot's going to hinge on the quarterback play in this ball game. And for Tennessee, it's injury questions. For Georgia, it's like, hey, guess what? Carson Beck is dead last in the SEC in interceptions. Only Garrett Nussmeier has thrown.
No, he's first in the SEC in interceptions.
Well, I meant that's what I meant. Like, yeah, in that context. So that's just where it's at. I mean, like, that's not getting fixed. Like, Beck has 12 to this point. And like, if you throw multiple picks against this defense, and that's what I find so fascinating about this matchup, is like Tennessee just keeps winning because they don't give up 20 or more. It's really hard to win football games when you only put up 17, 16, 18 points in conference play. So if Tennessee is able to keep that streak going another week, they're going to keep winning. And I think that's what's scary for Tennessee fans, is like, oh, can they keep doing it? I'm like, well, they've done it almost a year straight, so I might lean towards that continuing. I understand Georgia's a different animal altogether, but if not this year, when are you going to get Georgia? They've never been this vulnerable. I don't think they'll be this vulnerable next year, even if you get them at home. Like, I do not think this is going to continue into next year for them. This is the time. And we talked about, like, the last time Kirby lost to Ole Miss, he lost to Tennessee right after. So maybe lightning strikes twice
at
here,
home.
At home, 8 years later. But I think there's some other interesting things here too, which is, look, Tennessee has only given up 10 plays total of 30-plus yards all season. That's something I'm going to be monitoring all throughout this game, is Tennessee's secondary has eased all concerns. Jermod McCoy's a star. Boo Carter is playing his best football at the star position. They're good there. I am very curious, because where Tennessee has been most their weakness has popped up the most is post Keenan Peely, the linebacker position, because it's just young. Like Aaron Carter, Jeremiah Telander, Jalen Smith, and company. They're just young. But this is a good matchup for that because guess what? Like we talked about at the top of this preview, they're not going to run the ball down your throats. Like what Mississippi State did last week, Georgia's not going to do. That's not going to be the game plan. You talked about Nate Frazier, and we'll see how much they actually feature him because we haven't seen that all year from Georgia. We haven't seen like 20 carries from Nate Frazier in a key game yet. So I'll believe it when I see it in that regard.
I mean, I think the Florida game, he had something like 85 yards, right? Like
But how many carries did he have?
That was kind of like a breakout game, I want to say, because that was the game that ETN got hurt in. Let me see here. I'll tell you 1 second.
He had 19 carries.
19 for 82. So it's like that was a big time snaps he was getting.
Yeah.
2 catches for 7 yards.
Tennessee is 13th in points per drive. Georgia's 27th. Tennessee is number 1 in defensive busted drive rate, which number 1 in the country, which I thought was an interesting stat. So 27% of opponent drives resulted in 0 or fewer yards. That's a wild number. Where 1 of 3 drives against Tennessee nothing happens. Like they do nothing and then they punt or throw a pick or whatever. Like it ends. So Tennessee's been the best in the country at quick, just nothing drives. I wonder from your vantage point, Matt Green, because we saw Georgia they didn't take any chances against Ole Miss, right? Part of that might have been the weather. Part of it might have been the offensive line. Part of it might have been not trusting receivers. Georgia leads the country in drops. Like if you don't convert on those and the drops pop up in this game, if you have a couple shot plays where Tennessee has some broken coverage on the back end and Lennon Humphreys or Arian Smith drop those, that could be the difference in the game to me because I just don't I think Georgia can't afford not to make the most of a couple chances that they might get in this game. And that's something that has plagued them all year is the drop stuff where it's like if Carson Beck puts it on the money and these guys drop a couple key, like clear walk-in touchdowns, like that could also be the difference. Like I don't know what you think on that one, but I just don't know how Georgia wins this game without hitting on more explosive plays than anybody has hit on Tennessee in a calendar year.
Well, for one, there's a chance that 17 points wins this game, right? Like Tennessee
we say that.
I'm just saying Tennessee's offense has not done anything against any of the other teams they've played for the most part. And is Georgia the best defense they've played so far in terms of just
I think
SEC
Oklahoma's right up there.
But
Alabama.
I'm not looking at it right now, but so Georgia's one of the better defenses they've played on the road as well. So there's a chance that Georgia doesn't have to just have this offensive explosion to beat Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, 14th ranked rushing offense in the conference, leading the nation in drops, quarterback leading the conference in interceptions. That's just, I can't imagine a worse combination of things that your team does offensively that is just killing themselves. Like throwing picks and dropping balls, like on a team that can't run the football, is a terrible combination. I tend to think Georgia's got better players than they've shown to this point, but at this point, it's hard to say. If Georgia's not, I would say the reason they didn't take any chances against Ole Miss is because they couldn't block their defensive line. And if they're not able to block Tennessee's defensive line, then they're going to have a lot of problems in this one too. I tend to think that they'll be able to do something offensive again on the ground, just because, like you said, Mississippi State, Kentucky were able to do a little something on the ground against this. Like Mississippi State hasn't been a great running team by any means. So, there is a chance that Georgia is able to do something to keep this defense honest, but I mean, they just can't turn the ball over. So if you're turning the ball over, if you're dropping passes, that absolutely could be the difference in winning or losing this game.
Yeah. And that's why this is a tough game. I feel like this is a 24-17 game. Is my gut. And that might be Georgia. It might be Tennessee. I don't see a blowout either way. Do you? I would be very surprised if one team blows out the other.
No, I don't think these offenses are good enough to blow anyone out, to be honest. Like that Texas game was as close to like a blowout as I can kind of see for Georgia. Like they kind of physically dominated the game, but I mean, it was a 2-touchdown game by the end of it. So yeah, I mean, obviously Clemson, they did beat 34-3, but that was like 2 months ago at this point. It might as well be a whole nother season at that point. So, things are definitely, they feel a lot different. That's the biggest difference in these two teams statistically, is just like Tennessee hasn't had a good offense, but they at least have had an identity, and they're the number 2 running offense in the country. And Dylan Sampson is a low-key Heisman, dark horse at this point, as far as I'm concerned. So Georgia's defense has not been, or Georgia's run game has definitely not been that. So if Tennessee's able to just kind of, control the clock and play the defensive football, like play Georgia football better than Georgia's playing it, like, that's definitely a recipe for a win for Tennessee. But we haven't seen them put up a lot of points in most of their conference games, especially in the first half.
And I mean, I think we're going to have to see Tennessee win on the perimeter. Like, this is not the same first round guys in that back end. Like, Malachi Starks has had trouble this season and frustrated some Georgia fans. We'll see what the corners look like in this game with Harris and company, and what that looks like matched up with Tennessee's wideouts. But Tennessee's wideouts have had no success against Georgia for the last three years. So that's a big one. Like I talked about Dante Thornton at the top here. Like Dante Thornton has to play and have a big game. I think Brew has to win on the perimeter some. I think Squirrel has to find a way in the slot. And maybe Tennessee played a lot of 12 personnel of late with Holden Stays and Miles Kitselman. Maybe they live in that in this one, but maybe the tight ends have to have a big game. Maybe that's kind of something that Tennessee does in this game. But I just don't think either team can win without hitting several explosive plays where it's just, I think either Arian Smith, Dante Thornton, Dylan Bell, some of these guys have to have big games for their team to win, because these quarterbacks are going to need help from their perimeter players.
Well, I think that leads to the best point, and I feel like we've buried the lead here. Who is Tennessee's quarterback on Saturday? Is Nico playing? Like I thought it was precautionary. They took him out, and now, the Bear, I guess, is just kind of breaking the news. I haven't heard anyone say it until the Bear is like, he's not playing. And so what does the Bear know about Tennessee, about Nico not playing? And is that why the line is at 10.5? Does Vegas know Nico's not playing? Like, what's going on here?
I mean, I think we'll know for sure. Like, anyone who's saying they know is just not, like, it's just not accurate. Like, it's just one of those where this is something that's day to day. It's truly a day to day thing. And we will see at the end of the week. I mean, Heupel's been very confident all week that he's going to play. He's listed as questionable, not out for this game, along with Dante Thornton. And we'll see whether or not he suits up and plays. But I think we'll have a better handle by tomorrow. This goes up on Thursday, Friday at the latest, how things are trending. But I also,
he's on the injury report as questionable. Him and Thornton and Bison Lang.
Well, he doesn't play. Yeah, he's
also questionable. But then Georgia's
Sean Bishop's
got
out though.
ETN, Anthony Evans, Cash Jones, Micah Morris, all listed as questionable.
Your entire running back room, basically.
Yeah, 2 running backs out, 2 running backs questionable. Dwight Phillips, he was the one that got that little reverse, like 5-10-yard touchdown in the Florida game. His first carry of his career, true freshman. I don't know if that guy, his dad, I think, was an Olympic like track star or something. But he, I don't know if he's gonna see some playing time, but I don't know. It's not great look in Georgia's backfield right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But it might be Nate Frazier. Just give him the ball, maybe make some mistakes, maybe make some plays, and this is his coming out party. Who knows?
Maybe. I'll believe when I see it with this Tennessee defense. I will believe when I see it. Also, James Pierce, like, what does he do? Like, Carson Beck, like, that's the other part of this is like, and then we can do our actual picks here, because I think Georgia's offensive line is going to be a problem. Like, I think Carson Beck is going to have to make plays under pressure in this game and under duress. The difference, though, is Ole Miss is number 1 in sacks. Like, Ole Miss gets home. Tennessee just wears offenses down. Like, James Pierce has had a sack in every SEC game this year. James Pierce is going to get a sack against Carson Beck on Saturday. That much I'm pretty certain of. But it's not the same. How Tennessee's defensive line overwhelms offensive lines is not the same of what Princely and Walter Nolan and company do at Ole Miss. Both are elite in different ways, though. Like Carson Beck and company, they're getting the ball out quick, going side to side. They're just like, hey, this is just not like they're getting home and taking Carson to the ground. Tennessee just wears on you, where it's like, oh, here's the next wave of blue chippers coming in who've played 8 snaps here. Jason Jenkins was the highest graded Tennessee defensive player last week, and he played like less than 20 snaps, and he's your third string strong side defensive end. You're going to rotate so much that these Georgia offensive tackles in the third and fourth quarter are going to be gassed because they're going to be looking at this and they're like, oh, are you kidding me? Caleb Herring, 8 plays in, he's going to come in over here, and oh great, here comes Bryson Eason and Omar Norman Lott again. Okay, here's another wave of Tyree West, and you get what I'm saying? Like, I think that's what Tennessee does. Tennessee wears on these offensive linemen over the course of a game. In the second half, they're just like, like this sucks. Like, it sucks to play Tennessee's defensive line. But I think the sacks come more so with Ole Miss. I'm very curious what that matchup looks like and if Tennessee gets home more often in this game. But outside of James Pierce and Omar Norman Lott, like, it's not really a defensive line that lives and dies by sacks. They live and die by just wearing you down and just making life hard, knocking quarterbacks out because they just keep coming as the game goes on, and they're just deep. They're 10 to 12 deep, and they're healthy. Like, the defensive line, Tyree West is back for this game. They're going to be amped up, and I think Tennessee's defensive line is going to be strong. So Georgia is going to need to take advantage of what Tennessee's struggles have been in the first half scoring the football. They need to have a lead going into the half because this Tennessee defensive line will continue to wear on what I think is a vulnerable Georgia offensive line that's not getting cleaned up a week removed from Ole Miss.
No, I think that's probably the number one matchup in this whole game. Like, Ernest Green versus James Pierce. Like, Ernest Green got abused last week at Ole Miss. So how he matches up, like, because I think last year I heard a lot of people talk about Georgia neutralized James Pierce last year by running at him, and they kind of took him out of the game. This team just has not been able to run the ball like that, and so you're probably not going to be able to neutralize James Pierce in that way. So I tend to think it's going to be the defense that makes some plays that kind of that more so than the offense just kind of having their way with Tennessee or anything. I don't see some more sort of offensive explosion happening, but I think Georgia's defense is going to have to make some plays, force some turnovers, like, and more than anything, it's just that Tennessee has not played in an environment like they're going to play on Saturday night, like, all season. Nico has never played in an environment like he'll play on Saturday night. Like, Oklahoma, like, that's cute. Arkansas, 75,000, that's cute. You know, it's a big time stadium, but 93,000 Sanford Stadium at night, like, Georgia's season on the line. Like, we have not seen a Georgia football season since year one of Kirby Smart, where their season was done before December. Like, I'm not even counting 2020 because I don't even remember what the dates were. The season was pushed back, but whatever. Their season was basically over after they lost to Florida that year. But outside of the pandemic year, Georgia's season has ended in the SEC championship, or it's ended in the college football playoff. Like, you haven't seen any seasons be ending in the second weekend of November. So it's just going to be a sense of urgency in Sanford Stadium. And that's kind of one of my biggest things. It's more vibes. It's more intangible stuff. And obviously the Nico question marks throws in another huge wrench. But just the fact that this college football season has felt like nobody's as good as we think they are and no one's as bad as we think they are, right? It's just, once it's time for a team, it's like, well, if they lose this one, they're eliminated. Then they win that game, and now they're right back in the mix. So I just feel like it would be too convenient for Tennessee to win this game, and we get a nice one loss SEC championship. It's going to be chaos. I'm at least 5-way two team SEC tiebreaker is going to happen. Like, it's going to be madness. I can't pick Tennessee in this team going on the road and scoring 20 points against Georgia, to be honest. Like, even though this Georgia offense or Georgia defense hasn't been like spectacular this year, like, how many games have they scored more than 20 points on the road or just in general this year in SEC play? Like, it hasn't been many, right? No. So I think the home field advantage, I just think is what I think ultimately makes the difference in this one. I'm not going to pick Georgia to cover 10. Maybe Vegas knows something I don't know, but that seems crazy to me. And it's funny you said 24-17. That's actually my exact score. I predicted. I'm gonna say Georgia wins this one 24-17.
I'm gonna do that too, but I'm just gonna flip it because I think Tennessee's winning this game. I thought about this all week. Look, if not now, I don't know when. Everyone just knows that Tennessee's better. Like Tennessee, in a neutral side, I think Tennessee fans have shown more over the course of a full season than Georgia has. Obviously, Tennessee beat Alabama. Georgia lost to Alabama.
Why do you think that though?
I think
because that's what I was kind of figure out too. Like they're averaging 24 points a game in conference. Is it like you just feel better about watching like 65-0 at halftime versus Kent State? You just saw like big point totals, so you like.
No, I've seen that they haven't given up 20 or more points all season long. I think they know like the defense, the floor of this defense is just so high that when the offense gives you something, like they're moving the ball, the offense isn't a train wreck. The offense was starting to figure out some stuff. Nico had 2 big plays, touchdowns. Like Nico was 2 touchdowns away from, or 2 drop touchdowns against Kentucky away from 400 yards passing, 3 TDs and no picks. Georgia struggled against the Kentucky
also
team.
the drops came from the receivers. Like
no, I'm not disagreeing, but the guys are open. The scheme is working, is what I'm saying. Like you're seeing that all happen. It's just things the little things are preventing Tennessee winning 45-20 versus 28-20.
But isn't that what kind of makes it more concerning? Because
no,
it feels like Heupel's scheme is a cheat code, right? So if you're not balling out when you have a cheat code, are you like bad? Like I don't. No, I just
look at who the best quarterbacks in the conference are right now. Like they're all older. Like Nico is growing. Like Nico has played his best 8 quarters of football in his last 8 quarters. Like Nico has started to get, like he's not turning the ball over. I think he is figuring some stuff out. He's using his legs. Ever since the second half of the Alabama game, Nico has been an extremely good quarterback here at Tennessee. Now,
Is that, like 1.5? What is that? Like
8 quarters.
You're saying?
Yeah, 8 quarters.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the most important thing. He's playing his best ball. Carson Beck is playing his worst ball of his career. So I think coming in, it's like I would take Nico Iamaleava over Carson Beck over this full calendar season based on what we've seen to this point. Like Nico is more like I think Nico is playing good ball right now. And I think Dylan Sampson is better than anyone Georgia has in the backfield. I think Tennessee's offensive line right now is better than Georgia's offensive line. I think Tennessee's defensive line is better than Georgia's defensive line. I think Tennessee's secondary is better than Georgia's secondary. The thing that Georgia has right now is the linebackers like Smile Munden and company.
But with all of that said, Georgia's still averaging more points against a better schedule, against a more difficult schedule, and just better offensive numbers across the board. Like there have been a better passing offense. Like Carson Beck's throwing way too many picks, so like that kind of changes it. But they're throwing for way more yards, like more touchdowns. Like obviously interceptions. It's a total equalizer. Like I don't know that most people would probably agree with you that they would take Nico over Carson Beck right now because he's throwing so many interceptions, as I censor myself. But Tennessee's passing offense has not been good to this point. Like that, and that's what's kind of crazy
it hasn't
to me.
Been
it's
bad,
just kind of vibe.
And it's been close. Like, and they it was good in the first half against Mississippi State. It was.
But Mississippi State, everyone's done that to me.
It was good in the second half against Alabama. Like they're figuring some stuff out. Like it was mostly okay against Kentucky. And like I said, like your 2 drops, one wide open, one on a quick slant. Like it's just a huge yak touchdown.
Hey, you don't even want to open that.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, but I get what you're saying,
like,
but those drops, a lot of those aren't touchdown drops. Like I'm
Carson
talking.
Beck leads the country in yards, in drop yardage this year. And that's not even including when guys could just be running for another 30 yards. Like that first play of the game.
Yeah, then you're kind of proving my point though. Like why are we predicting that that's getting fixed this week? Like it's probably going to continue. They're probably going to keep dropping passes.
But I'm saying you're talking about Nico's performance in citing the drops that he played better. Like Carson Beck could cite drops as much as any quarterback in all of college football right now.
Right. I just like this is a trench game at the end of the day, and I think Tennessee's better in the trenches than Georgia is this year. And I don't know if that will be the case again for a while, but Tennessee's defensive line should win the battle against Georgia's offensive line. And I just feel like who can dictate this game more will win. And I think if Dylan Sampson's healthy and ready to go, and I think Tennessee's defensive line plays the way it's capable of, Tennessee's going to be able to Kentucky their way into making this a game against Georgia and beat Georgia, because it's only going to take 1 or 2 Carson mistakes where that is just like 1 bad pick, 2 bad picks, something like that, or a Nate Frazier fumble at the goal line, whatever, that just you can't have happen, because I don't think there are going to be many opportunities to break this game open or to really solidify a win. And I just trust Tennessee more. I think Tennessee is going to just win this game outright. I think it's going to be really close. I think it's going to be a battle, but everything I've looked at, just I can't shake the feeling that like this Georgia team is not the Georgia of old. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be the case that the empire's dying, this, that, and the other. I just think this Georgia team is a 9-3 type team. I predicted for the year they felt 10-2, 9-3. And I don't think that's changing this week. I don't like their receivers. I don't like how banged up they are at running back. I don't like where Carson Beck is at as a quarterback coming into this game. Worst in the SEC in interceptions thrown. I don't like where this offensive line is with Georgia going up against this Tennessee pass rush and defensive line as a whole. I think just everything just screams Tennessee. And if you remove the nameplates and if you threw Alabama's helmets or Florida's even on this, or maybe Texas, whatever, I think people would look at this game differently. But because of how these previous Georgia-Tennessee games have gone in the Heupel era, people are nervous to pick the Vols outright in this one. I just am going to pick them because I think they are the better team right now, and they have the better path to victory in terms of where the matchups are. And yeah. I think right now that's Tennessee. I don't think it's a hot take. I just think Tennessee could absolutely lose this game. I'm not saying I'm extremely confident about this, but I think right now they should win this game. That is my gut. Is Tennessee should win this football game.
And so all of everything you said, and I definitely understand why you would think Tennessee's better at a lot of positions, especially if they can whoop Georgia's offensive line the way Ole Miss did, or even similar to the way Ole Miss did. But if Nico doesn't play, how does that change your prediction?
I still think they can win because I think they're going to try and win with Dylan Sampson and win. All it's going to take is a couple shot plays. If Gaston Moore can hit Dante Thornton once.
But that's what I think. Nico can hit 1 or 2 shot plays on Georgia.
Gaston Moore can too. He's a gunslinger. Gaston Moore takes shots. He forced 3 defensive pass interference in the second half. Like, Gaston Moore is going to put the ball up. Like, he's
forcing passes interference. Get out of here. Is that a stat?
It's a stat, man. Did you hear what Hype called him in the second half in that video?
No.
Gas pipe. He said 8's out, gas pipe's in. It's incredible stuff. The gas pipe. I'm ready to go with the gas pipe or Nico in this game. But I think it's less likely Tennessee wins with Gaston, but I don't think it's out of the question because of how I think this game's going to go. Because I think this game will ultimately Tennessee's path to victory. Don't turn the ball over. Defensive line wins the line of scrimmage, and Dylan Sampson stays healthy. And the other thing, and then 2. You just need 2 big receptions. 2 big receptions. One of them is touchdown. And I think you can win this game 24-17.
Last thing I'll say, just because it's the last stat that I didn't get a chance to cite, yards per play against SEC competition. Georgia's 8th in the SEC. Tennessee is 11th. So it's interesting how it's just.
I wonder what it is in the second half.
We're just very down on, Georgia going to that Ole Miss game. They were 13th in the SEC in first half points per game, and they were 1st in the SEC in second half points per game. So that might be a little different now after getting shut out. Or was it shut out in the second half, or did they score 3? They scored 3 points in the second half versus Ole Miss. But yeah, so it's just interesting, like just the expectations versus Georgia's just so underwhelming. And trust me, I feel like I've been in the group chats. It's like, yeah, we look like we suck, but we do have to remember, like, Georgia's not terrible. They're just not as good as we thought they were going to be. They could still be better than a lot of their other teams. But yeah, this is going to be an exciting one. I'm here for the blackout. Hopefully they rock the black jerseys. And, maybe we need a little fake juice. Maybe it is a gimmick. Maybe we need a gimmick right now. Georgia needs to do something, get those fans to bring it more than they did against Auburn back in October.
There you go. Next up, Matt Green. Mizzou at South Carolina. The Gamecocks are 12-point favorites. What say you, sir?
Battle of Columbia, sir. I didn't realize this until I looked it up. Missouri has won 5 straight in this rivalry. South Carolina is playing their best ball of the season. I think they are clearly the better team. Brady Cook is doubtful. But why do I feel like South Carolina is just getting too much love?
You
Like
just don't like South Carolina.
it just feels like South Carolina's getting too much love, and it just can't all be just smooth sailings and they beat everyone they're supposed to beat, right? Like something weird's got to happen with South Carolina. I can't pick Missouri to beat them just because I feel like South Carolina is the better team, but I'm taking Missouri to cover. So I'm going to take South Carolina 28, Missouri 23. Even though Brady Cook is I think doubtful.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not really
that Vanderbilt performance wasn't necessarily a dominant performance, even though they ended up 28-7.
South Carolina's just really good. I cited a bunch of stuff on the Sunday night show about just how good South Carolina's been all across the board. I mean, we talk about the defensive line, like with Kennard and Dylan Stewart, they're going to cause problems. Like, I don't think people understand just how bad this Mizzou team is offensively. Mizzou here, let me pull this up. They are 124th in yards per attempt in SEC play. That's awful. Like, they're one of the worst offenses in conference play in college football. It's broken. No Brady Cook. Like, it's just they're winning games. I guess that's a testament, like the with Pine Mania. But I mean, the Gamecocks are 6th nationally in defense. They're 12th in F+ ratings, which combines FEI and Bill Connolly's S&P Plus. South Carolina is 8th in 30+ yard plays in conference play. They figured a lot of stuff out. Rocket Sanders is healthy. South Carolina is really good. I think South Carolina is going to run the table here and finish 9-3. I think they're going to beat Clemson. I think they're going to keep winning down the stretch. I think South Carolina has found something. They have found the right mixtures. Lenora Sellers is the guy, and that defense is legit. So give me South Carolina to drub Mizzou here at home and win and cover. Give me South Carolina 31, Mizzou 10.
All right, put it on the board. Before you move to the next one, I just I know you've heard about this this Reddit SEC calculator. If Georgia beats Tennessee, and then basically this just kind of the matchups happen the way they kind of should, and teams went out, and Texas beats A&M, it would be Alabama and Texas in the SEC championship.
That's what I said.
Oh, you said that already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so go on.
But if Texas A&M wins, it'd be Texas A&M Alabama. In that one, like Texas A&M is going to be a play-in game. Yeah.
A&M and Alabama. Okay.
Arkansas hosting Texas. Speaking of the Longhorns, 13.5-point home favorites. What say you, Matt Green?
So I feel like Texas's entire resume is their quality loss to Georgia. And each week, like we're talking about, Georgia hasn't looked great. So it's interesting how high they continue to be in the rankings. But do we really believe in Arkansas? Like, I feel like Taylor Green, is this the second best team they faced all year in the SEC out next to Georgia? Like Taylor Green's kind of an X factor. So I could see, Arkansas giving them a game. I tend to think they don't cover the 13.5. I'll say that. Like, I just don't really know how good Texas is. To be honest, it's crazy that we're in week 12 and I still don't really know how good they are. I don't know who they made a deal with to get this schedule in year one in the SEC. But, Arkansas is a tough place to play, but we've also seen them get routed a couple of times at home since that upset win over Tennessee. But I think I'm going to take Arkansas to keep it close. So give me Texas. I'm going to say 34-24. Arkansas covers.
I think Arkansas is bad, man. Like, I think Arkansas, and that's why what hurts Tennessee so much. It's like you just should not have lost that game. Arkansas is just not good. Arkansas, they're 106th in drives that reach the opponent 20-yard line. You talked about like who Texas is even like really flexed on, and it's just kind of, I mean, they obviously blow out Florida last week. Sure, whatever. You barely beat Vanderbilt the week prior. You get blasted at home by Georgia. You blow out a terrible offense in Oklahoma. Maybe that's the only offense in the SEC worse than Mizzou. Mississippi State at home. You talked about like this schedule is just, it's an awful schedule. And I mean, Kentucky next week will probably be a battle because Kentucky does this against every good team. Is they're going to bring their A game to Austin, and then their season's on the line against A&M. But I don't know. I just think Texas is going to win. They're going to blow out Arkansas here. I think Arkansas is just a bad team. Arkansas's wide receiver Andrew Armstrong, he's second in the SEC in 10+ yard plays. That's something maybe to monitor. But I think Texas keeps rolling based on what happened against Florida. They might get challenged a little bit at home against Kentucky, but I think their season comes down to A&M here in 2 weeks. And I think Arkansas is just, that offense, you go through the numbers, it's just not good. And Taylor Green has some stats, but they're not finishing drive. There's just something off. Like they're just not, they don't have the juice they had at the beginning of the year. So give me Texas 35, Arkansas 24.
So you were also saying that Texas doesn't cover.
Yeah, just on the road. I'll let them cover because it's on the road, but I don't think this game's ever going to be in doubt.
35.
LSU at Florida.
After I said 34-24. Wow, real original, sir. Real original.
Thank you. LSU at Florida, 4.5-point home dogs. Is this the Zeus home dog of the week, Matt Green?
The Florida Gators. No. I'm not gonna make that mistake again. Zeus, I want to say that was back in week 3. Zeus's home dog of the week, picking the Florida Gators. What a mistake that was. I don't know who was that. The A&M game, maybe. I'm not sure.
I can see that.
Florida's just so beaten up. It's still like it gets funnier. I feel like to me every week that like they made the statement to keep Napier just because they're like, look, it's gonna get bad. We're keeping him, right? Just don't even bring it up. All right, we're taking that conversation off the table. I think they're just a beat up team right now. I don't know what I'm missing. Like 4.5. It feels like obviously this LSU team has played like 1-score games with like everyone they've played all season, other than Alabama, who just boat raced them. But LSU just feels like so much better team than Florida. So I don't like, is this going to be a hostile environment? Like I saw message board stuff of like fans not showing up because they were upset about like keeping Napier and stuff. Like, I don't know if that's a real thing or something that's actually happening, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be like a hostile environment they really go into. So I tend to think LSU wins this one by multiple scores. I'm going to say LSU 34-20.
Interesting. I wonder how LSU responds. I mean, you got embarrassed on primetime by the Alabama Crimson Tide at home here, and you're not playing for anything anymore. Your season's effectively over. I wonder what the quit factor is for LSU. I mean, Billy Napier got announced. He's back next year. So they have something to play for in Gator country here. And it's still a tough place to play. Like playing in Gainesville is a tough environment, regardless of who's under center and the injury situation, everything they're dealing with. LSU's 56th in drive success rate. Garrett Nussmeier and Jackson Dart are the only two QBs to throw 20+ touchdowns this year in the SEC, which is interesting. Only Beck, though, has thrown more picks than Nussmeier. Nussmeier's 6 touchdowns,
How
5
many
picks.
Has he thrown?
11.
Oh, so he's close.
He's close. 6 touchdowns and 5 picks on the road. Like, I don't think LSU's going to play well here in Gainesville. I think this is going to be a game. That's why it's down to 4.5. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to do some dumb stuff in this game. Like, he's the ultimate. I have no idea if he's good. And he's going to go in the first round in the 2025 NFL draft, and I'm just going to be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if he would be
a first rounder.
I think so, yeah. He feels Will Levis-y to me. There is some Will Levis to Garrett Nussmeier where you can see.
I think he's a lot better than Levis. Levis felt like it was all upside. Like he wasn't even a good SEC quarterback. Like Nussmeier,
first year, he was
I think
solid.
you said a couple years ago, or a couple weeks ago, that you thought Nussmeier was the best quarterback in the SEC, right? Like,
yeah,
he's still up there. So Levis, was there ever a time where you were like, he's better than like the 8th best quarterback in the SEC? Like I never understood the Will Levis hype, other than he's like his prototype size and like he's athletic. Like, I don't know. I saw the tools, but
he had the Stafford arm.
Sure.
Same number.
Yeah.
Did that thing with mayonnaise and bananas and coffee. I don't remember what it was now.
Is it mayonnaise and coffee or something?
Yeah, it was something weird.
Yeah,
like that.
something like that.
I'm gonna go LSU wins, but this is one. If I was in Zeus's shoes, this might be my home dog of the week here. I really am tempted to take Florida here outright, but I'm not going to do it. I think they're just at the injuries and everything else have done it, but I do think they're going to get up for this game, and I think this game is going to be a fight until the end. So give me LSU 32, Florida 30.
All right. Wait, 32-30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Florida's covering. Gotcha.
Pitt at home against Clemson.
32-30.
The
Strange
Panthers are
football
10.
score.
Huh?
Strange football score, 32-30.
We've seen some weird ones, man. I think Tennessee, Georgia.
Is that a
really weird one.
scoregami?
Yeah, like 15 or something for Tennessee, Georgia. I could see. Pitt 10-point home dogs. What say you, sir?
I was really close to making this my home dog of the week. I'll be honest. I feel like I doubted Clemson last week at Virginia Tech. They took care of business. Pitt's kind of showing they were fraudulent after that. What was it, 7-0 start? I think I'm gonna have to take Clemson to win this one and cover. I'm gonna say Clemson 31-17.
I don't know if people realize how bad Pitt's played of late. Like, the offense quietly just fell off a cliff. Eli Holstein, the juice is gone. Pitt has really fallen off there. Pitt is 55th in drive success rate now in the season. On offense, only FSU has been worse. And this is a combination one with just where Cade and Eli are right now. Only FSU has been worse on offense in yards per play in the ACC in November than Cade Klubnik and Eli Holstein. Pitt -2 turnover margin in the month of November, so it's just not all going well, and it's not really going well for Clemson either. So I think this is going to be an ugly fist fight, and I think Pitt covers, but I don't think Pitt ends up winning this football game, and the slide continues. Give me Clemson 27, Pitt 24.
All right.
Next up here, we've got Arizona State at Kansas State. Kansas State 8.5 home favorites. What say you, Matt Green?
I think Kansas State, you can't really trust anyone in the Big 12, but Kansas State feels like at home they're one of the more trustworthy teams. So I'm going to go with Kansas State to win this one, and I'm going to say Kansas State covers. So let's go 30-20. Kansas State wins this game.
Nobody cares, but Kenny Dillingham in year 2 has already fixed Arizona State. Like, this is a terrible situation. They're 7-2, Matt Green. They have a path to the Big 12 title game right now. And I don't think people understand that this was a terrible situation that Kenny Dillingham walked into. And all the offseason buzz was on Arizona coming into the year, the preseason, Noah Fafita, McMillan, and all those guys. They're 3-6 and have been awful all year long. Arizona State, meanwhile, 7-2. No one talking about them. Sun Devils stand up. And I don't understand why. Like, they're good. If they beat Kansas State, beat BYU, and then win the finale at Arizona, they're going to probably make the Big 12 title game if they get a little bit of help. And I think Colorado just has to lose like once or something. In that span, they get in. Arizona State's 23rd nationally in yards per play. Damon Allred, who covers the team on X, he said Arizona State DC Brian Ward on Kansas State quarterback Avery Johnson. He's most reminds me of, in terms of passer or runner, like Lamar Jackson, which I thought was interesting. When he gets out, he's as fast as anybody I've seen in space. We've got to be able to keep him in front of us to be successful on Saturday. This is going to be a fun matchup that nobody cares about. The reason I bring all that up is like, this is a sneaky like Big 12 championship elimination game kind of for both schools. And like you said, it's hard to predict the Big 12 week to week, but Avery Johnson is playing really good football, but no one notices because Kansas State lost 2 games, and it's like, oh, the post Will Howard, like Avery Johnson. There was so much preseason. Avery Johnson's been really good. Kansas State just lost 2 games, and they're like the 23rd best team in the country. They're just not like the 10th best. And I'm gonna go. Kenny Dillingham gets a huge emotional win here on the road, upsets Kansas State in the Little Apple. I'm gonna ride the Dillingham wave here a little bit. I think they win this game outright. I think this is my upset of the weekend. Give me Arizona State outright, 34, Kansas State 31.
Wow. I would have said, with all due respect to Avery Johnson, I would have said more of a Connor Shaw comp, maybe, instead of
not a Jabo Shaw.
No, Connor Shaw. He was a player now. He gets a little.
Wasn't Jabo Shaw the quarterback at Georgia Southern for a little bit too? Were they related?
I think they were related. Flowery Branch guys, I want to say.
There you
I'm
go.
not 100% sure about that, though.
Flowery Branch Falcons stand up.
I thought Jabo Shaw was like Georgia Tech or something, wasn't he?
Did he not end up at Georgia Southern? One of them ended up at Georgia Southern.
I'm not. Yeah, Connor Shaw was the South Carolina quarterback. I mean, he was good.
Yeah, but one of them ended up at Georgia Southern.
I'm not talking about that guy.
Hold on.
I'm talking about the one that people remember.
Yeah, no, hold on. Losing the general. Okay, hold on. I'm looking at these with Monken. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, Jabo Shaw, quarterback at Georgia Southern with Monken.
Okay.
Making me feel like I'm losing my mind here. If anyone knows where the Shaw family has played football in the South, it's Chase Thomas in this program. And also, what a name, Jabo Shaw. I love one's Jabo and one's Connor. It's pretty great.
Yeah. It's like the Rogers brothers, James and Jock Quiz. That one always made me laugh.
Yeah. I think Travis Hunter's brother is like Travis Hunter. I saw he's a sophomore recruit. His family moved to Effingham, and I saw him pop up this week. I think he's Travis Hunter, and his brother is
that
Travis.
Right? Oh man, who was it? There's two guys that have like one has his middle name as the first middle and middle first. Like they have the like swapped. I can't remember who they are. Brothers. It's like that would get confusing.
Yeah. Utah at Colorado. The last one we'll spend some time on here, and then we'll run through the rest. Matt Green. Colorado, 11.5-point home favorites with they control their own Big 12 and college football playoff destiny, sir.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Honestly, they're a great story. I've been doing a little bit of thinking about this, a little analysis, if you will. I think we've talked about how they were the story of college football last year, and now they're good. No one wants to talk about them. I think it's because a lot of the coverage they were getting was just hate. And there's a lot of people that were hating on the Buffaloes and that what Deion was doing was never going to work. And now that it's working, they're been a little quiet. They don't want to talk about Colorado and how good they've actually been. They've been kind of solid in the trenches, and their playmakers are pretty legit, and they have maybe the best quarterback in all of college football, and maybe the Heisman winner on their team as well. Like Travis Hunter, it was kind of like I'm guilty of thinking like this isn't a gimmick, right? Like, is this guy, can he legit play both sides of the ball? Like, we were kind of anointing him before he ever actually started doing it. Well, he's been doing it all season, and this guy's just maybe the best player in college football. Utah, I think this could be similar to last week with Texas Tech. Like, obviously, Utah's a way different team than Texas Tech, but the way Utah gave BYU a game, obviously they've lost 5 straight right now. Like, but all of these games are lost by 1, by 3, by 6, by 8, by 13. Like, Utah is in all of these games. So I have a feeling they're going to be in this game with Colorado, but this offense is just too much for them to, with how bad Utah's offense has been. There's no way they can really hang with them for 4 quarters. So 3 quarters, maybe this is a 17-14 game going to the 4th quarter or something. But I tend to think Colorado pulls away. I'm going to say Colorado wins this one 35-21. Because Utah's not scoring more than 21 points, because that's the most they've scored in conference play all year.
It's also just, I think, a bad matchup for Colorado. Like, Utah's pissed coming off they've lost 5 straight. They should have potentially won here over against BYU without that penalty and everything else. Like, they were in a position to win, but they also got shut out in the second half. Like, we don't have to relitigate all that. Utah's 55th in F+ rating. Colorado, though, I was going through their stats. They're 27th in offense, 36th in defense. I thought they'd be higher in offense, but they're just solid. Everywhere you look, they're balanced. And like you said, they're just a solid, boring, good team this season. But their offensive numbers, I was trying to find something that kind of like pinpointed what I was saying about with Shador and Travis and everything else. But like, their numbers aren't elite anywhere. Like, they don't have like one elite thing that they're really good at this year. Sacks are still a problem. 29 sacks
you wouldn't call this
season.
An elite passing game?
But it's not elite. Like, it's good, but it's not elite. You know what I mean? Like, Shador individually, I think, has been elite, but the numbers I don't know. It's just, I mean, they're 10th in the Big 12 in yards per play. 10th.
but I mean, part of that is probably the not being able to run the ball and just
Yeah.
But I mean, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks on 73% completion, like, and there's a lot of playmakers. Like they got a lot of speed out wide.
I'm trying to figure it out. I don't really understand it because if you look at yards per game, they're 58th. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. But Colorado is good. But Utah, that defense is also legit. And Utah's got one of the best. They're second in the Big 12 in long scrimmage plays allowed. They don't give up big plays. Utah's going to cover here. Utah is going to give Colorado everything they can handle here. It kind of reminds me of Nebraska in Colorado last year, where Nebraska's defense was legit and the offense was just an absolute mess with Jeff Sims and company. I think that's what's happening with Utah and their third string quarterback. Is I think the offense is too broken to win this game, but the defense is going to keep them in this game against Colorado. So give me Colorado 28, Utah 23.
All right, put it on the board.
Quickly here, Matt Green. Oregon at Wisconsin. Wisconsin 14-point favorites. What say you? Or 14-point home dogs.
I feel like I want to pick Wisconsin. I feel like at some point, the Boise State game, they barely beat them early in the year. But it feels like surely Oregon's not going to go through the whole season without like a scare. Like, right? Like they haven't. I mean, obviously Ohio State was a close
hold on,
game,
they had a scare. It was Boise at home.
Oh no, I'm saying, but in terms of conference play, like in any of these Big Ten atmospheres, they're not gonna. None of these teams are gonna show up and give Oregon a game. Like, I kind of want to, but at the same time, Wisconsin, like with what they've done this year, there's no real reason to be confident in them. They gave Penn State a close game. That's probably the best thing you can say that Wisconsin's done this year. But I'm gonna take Wisconsin to cover the spread. That 14, maybe they can keep it close, but Oregon wins again. I'm gonna say 33-20.
I think Oregon rolls here. Wisconsin's got some real problems, and I don't think they're going to figure that out in this one. 14. I think Oregon wins in coverage. Give me Oregon 30. Give me Oregon 35, Wisconsin 13.
I'm changing my pick. I'm picking Oregon.
Boise
35-20. I changed it. It's Oregon.
Boise at San Jose State. San Jose State 13.5-point home favor or home dogs with Ken Nehemiah Tuilolo running things over there with the Spartans now. What say you, Matt Green?
I really just can't pick against the Boise State Broncos, sir. I think Genty's going to go for another 200, and Boise State gets this done. Give me Boise 41-24.
Okay. I think Boise's going to be another dogfight here. And with the triple down there in San Jose State, I think this is going to be another close game. I think San Jose State covers. I think Boise's going to be in a dogfight here. Give me San Jose State 38, Boise State 45.
45-38. Okay.
Kansas at BYU. The Cougs, 2.5-point home favorites. Do they stay undefeated, Matt Green?
Absolutely. This team's going undefeated. 27-24. BYU gets it done. It's like TCU of 2022. They find ways to win. They may have last week. That was a little questionable. I ended up seeing it after we talked about it. A little questionable, but they got
Kansas
it done.
though. They beat Iowa State last week. Could they be back to back? It kind of reminds me of Texas Tech, where Texas Tech was in that spot after a big win to beat Iowa State, and then they lose to Colorado. I think that's what happens here. Is good win last week by Kansas, but I don't think it's sustainable week over week. Give me BYU to keep it rolling here. Give me BYU 42, Kansas 28. Tulane at Navy. Navy 7-point home dogs. Is this your home dog of the week, Matt Green?
I think it has to be. I don't think we have any left.
I was trying to figure out what you were doing here.
It was Veterans Day on Monday, right? Let's support the troops. Navy. And can anyone ride the wave? The green wave like Navy? Come on now. These things they work themselves out. Give me Navy 21-20 beats Tulane. Home dog. of the week.
Tulane's legit, man. 18th best scoring defense in the country. Sumerall's got that thing humming post Willie Fritz. Like, they haven't dropped off at all. They're still in the CFP chase. Like, Tulane needs to win this game and win some style points. In this one, Navy, you lost to Rice. I just can't. Like, you're no longer in the conversation. Tulane is playing for. They're playing for a CFP berth. So give me Tulane 31, Navy 10.
All right.
Final one here. USC 9-point home favorites over Nebraska. USC has to win 2 of their final 3 here to make a bowl. They're 4-5 with Notre Dame and Wisconsin on the calendar here in UCLA. Matt Green, can you guess who the current offensive coordinator is for the Nebraska Cornhuskers now?
Oh, no, I do not know who it is.
Dana Holgerson. He was hired as an analyst last week, and he's now calling plays this week. Marcus Satterfield not calling plays, who I said before the year and have said forever, it's not good. Like, Marcus Satterfield is not a good offensive coordinator. It's been really bad for Nebraska of late. USC, though, also been, like, this is an unbelievable game to watch it. You're like, who wants to not win this football game more? And I think it's wild that you have a new offensive coordinator here in the middle of the year, but hey, it's an upgrade for Dylan Raiola to get Dana Holgerson in there. So good for him. But USC makes a change at quarterback too. Jaden Maeva, who was almost a dog at one point, I think, this offseason, and came in from UNLV.
Yeah, I was committed for 2 days?
Yeah. I think USC is going to win this game outright. I think people have still just gone way too far on USC. I think Nebraska's still got some problems they got to figure out down the stretch here. USC, I think they win and cover, but I think this is one to watch. USC cannot lose this one, or they're not going bowling. Because I don't think they're beating UCLA and Notre Dame down the stretch here. So they need this one to go bowling. And also Nebraska needs this one too. Like, both of these programs really need this victory. This is a sneaky, really important game for both teams this year. So give me USC to win. But I think Nebraska covers. Give me USC 34, Nebraska 31.
Yeah, I looking at USC's schedule, like, I don't think anyone thinks the Coliseum is a big time home field advantage by any means, but they've lost 5 games? They're 4-5.
Mm-hmm.
4 of those 5 are on the road. So they are winless on the road in Big Ten play this year, but they beat Rutgers at home, they beat Wisconsin at home, and then they took Penn State to overtime at home. Like, that's probably their best performance next to the LSU win. That loss to Penn State is probably their next best performance of the season. So I'm going to take USC at home, but I think I'm with you. I'm going to take Nebraska to cover. So I'm going to say 31-24. USC gets this one done.
There you go. Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Anything else you want to add before we close up shop here on a Wednesday night?
That's all I got, sir. This is Georgia-Tennessee week. It was very cordial. You know, we'll see what happens between now and Saturday. Really curious to see if Nico plays. That's a potential X factor in this game. But yeah, man, Athens, Georgia. Are you going to be in Athens this weekend?
We have an event on Friday night, so I will be in Athens Friday. I haven't decided if we're going to do it back-to-back on Friday and Saturday, because I'm not staying in Athens for the weekend. Probably, I don't know if you've seen hotel and everything else. It's just, yeah.
You're not welcome in Athens. I think is what it is.
Wow. But no, we'll see how the whole weekend unfolds. But yeah, and then drive back on Sunday, hopefully, to record a happy podcast here on Sunday night.
Hopefully we are recording a happy podcast. We can all agree on that.
Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you in a couple days.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.